So let's talk about how we get colonized. You probably know that the colonization of what is now known as the United States began hundreds of years ago, involved land theft and genocidal acts against indigenous people to this land, but it is critical for us to understand that colonization was not an event. Colonization is a superimposed cultural structure. If you want to understand how this shows up in culture today, check out my other video about what is colonization. The question that we're exploring here about how do we get colonized actually is as simple as this. What kind of a culture is being normalized? There are three main areas I want to focus on here. First of all, media. Now, I feel like this is common sense. I think a lot of us understand that we are heavily conditioned by media, by TV shows, by movies. This is how pop culture teaches us what it means to be part of society, part of the culture, teaches us what it means to be attractive, teaches us what it means to be important, teaches us what it means to be powerful. An example I want to use here is shows like Cops and Law and Order, which have brainwashed us to believe that there are good guys and there are bad guys. Bad guys deserve to be locked up. Good guys deserve to be free. Now, the roots of this and the impact of this is that it keeps us believing in systems of mass incarceration, which is the modern day version of the long-standing colonial practice of, you guessed it, slavery. So media is a huge one that continues colonizing us and culturally conditioning us to this day. Education is another big one. And this one's a difficult one to look at because we equate so many positive things and so many solutions and answers with education. Education is also a tool of colonization. Just think about the Pledge of Allegiance. Just think about what subjects are taught to children. They're not taught socio-emotional regulation. They're not taught how to get in touch with their own spiritual nature. They're taught to obey. They're taught to take tests. They're taught to sit quietly in desks and do as they're told, all of which are aspects of colonialism. There's actually a lot of similarities between practices that were used in indigenous boarding schools and modern day systems of education now. Education also dictates what we know about our history, and we are taught hugely false narratives, false messages, inaccurate perspectives. There are things that are completely cut out of our history. There are a lot of issues with how history, our US history specifically, is taught in the classroom. Just the other day, someone told me that George Washington actually had slave teeth implanted into his mouth, but they changed that narrative when they were teaching it in schools to that he had wooden teeth because they didn't want to be too controversial. So we don't teach children the truth, we don't teach adults the truth, and so we end up with a population that is easy to control, easy to manipulate, really ignorant and uninformed and indignant, right? If I don't understand the history of how we got to this place now, of course anyone who wants equal rights is going to set me off because I live in a country where everything is equal, and that's what I believe, and that's what I've been taught, and that's what colonialism has indoctrinated within me. I really discovered a lot of this while I was teaching because I was simultaneously taking a PhD course on educational inequality as I was showing up and teaching all of these college students, and I was beginning to see ways that I myself was acting as the oppressor, the ways that I myself was colonizing students and fixating overly on the package of which their message was delivered instead of the worth of the content of their words. Things like being a grammar police, picking apart sentence structure, just the perspective that I am, as the educator, here to inform students. We operate an education system in this country that's like, I'm gonna pull open your brain and I'm gonna put the information in and I'm gonna put it back and then you're good to go, you're educated. That's not what learning is. That's not what education is. It's an experience, it's a reciprocal relationship. There's always more to be learned. We don't learn from someone telling us in our brains what to think. And yet that is largely how we're structuring education today. So when I was teaching in front of a classroom with PowerPoints and indoctrinating students with messages that way, I was missing out on so much of being able to be in dialogue and explore what's going on the inside and what are people thinking and feeling, and let's bring up a shared discussion about this particular concept and see where people are really at and how we can find common ground. Completely different styles of learning and education, and they create completely different populations. Again, one population is really easy to control. The other population is free thinkers, innovative problem solvers, and people who understand depths of society that people on the surface don't see. The third area that came to me when I was thinking about this is the realm of politics. Politics in this country is constantly reinforcing the mentality of us versus them. And the reason behind that is because when we have one group of people to blame, when we have a scapegoat we can point to, we stop thinking about the problem, we stop looking for deeper solutions, we gotta just write it off as like, well, it's their fault. We gotta feel that indignation, and we don't have to think too much about it. So this stops us from digging down deeper into the problem, from looking at the roots of the issue. That opens up choice, that opens up possibility, that opens up innovative solutions, that opens up radical possibilities. Colonialism, capitalism, our political structures don't want that for us. They don't want us to be free thinkers. They don't want us to find the answers to our own solutions. They want to be able to tell us, like the teacher in the classroom, here's what you should believe, and I'm the one who's going to solve this problem. You can trust me. Don't trust yourself, trust me. Fear is a powerful manipulator. If we can plant seeds in fear about those people over there, the population is much easier to control. So with all of this, I'm absolutely not saying that there's some man behind a curtain somewhere pulling the strings and dictating all of this. It has truly become a matter of the systems. Systems seek their own survival. We've created a structure, we've created systems in this country that have been heavily rooted in colonialism, and these systems are just doing what they do. So the systems are creating these problems, we as the people are just going along with it. So capitalism is a system that survives by promoting the prioritization of capital. Fear sells, shock sells, sex sells, violence sells, alcohol sells, addiction sells. Nature-based spirituality doesn't sell. Human empowerment doesn't sell. People want to use money differently in a world that's not dictated by the collective and unnecessary hoarding of resources. Colonialism is also a system that survives by perpetuating unquestioned indoctrination. We all have collective generational trauma from the Crusades, from attacks on heretics, from attacks on spirituality, from attacks on difference. All of us have a fear implanted within us through colonialism of being too different, of stepping too far outside the lines, of cultural alienation. This is how colonialism keeps us in line, keeps us focused on being the same, on being normal. Again, on focusing on all those outer appearances. How are we showing up? Just ignore how you feel. Act like everything's fine. Be the dog in front of the burning dumpster fire. Again, a lot of this, we don't have individual power to immediately change. We can't snap our fingers and do away with the realities that have been embedded into the society that surrounds us. Where we have power is, what kind of a culture are we normalizing to ourselves? Think about your music. What kind of music do you listen to? What are the messages behind that music? What are the subtle messages? What are the paradigms that those lyrics and that music was created within? Is that what you want to be conditioning yourself with? Is that what you want to be normalizing in the world around you? If you were to take out the lyrics to your favorite song and live in that kind of a society, is that what you would want to create? Think about the TV shows you watch, the movies you watch. What kind of a paradigm are those rooted in? What are they socializing you to believe is normal? Who are they socializing you to want to be like? Think about your friends, your peers, the social spaces you inhabit. What kind of a person do you have to show up to be in order to be accepted in those spaces? Can you bring the fullness of your truth? Can it matter a little less what the surface level package is that you're putting on? Can you show up in your inner truth? Can you express what you're really feeling? Are those people creating the kind of culture that you want to live in? Are those people creating the kind of culture that you want for everybody else in this society? There's a saying that we become like the 5 people we spend the most time with. Is that what you're choosing? Is that what you want? And no judgment on any of these. I don't know what your answers are. I know my answers are mixed on a few of them. These are just questions to get us thinking. What are we training ourselves for? In our free time, what are we training ourselves for? Are we training ourselves in our free time to zone out, to continue unquestioned participation in this colonial reality? Or are we training ourselves in our free time to rediscover ourselves, to refine who we are, to rediscover the natural world, to restore the humanity of humankind into something more natural, something more real, more genuine, more authentic? The micro becomes the macro, just like the macro becomes the micro. The world is what we live it to be. What kind of a world are you living into reality? And again, no judgment here. I'm not saying you're a good person or a bad person based on your answers to these questions. Goddess knows I'm not perfect either. But I am saying we can be conscious about it. Let's not just replicate what's been replicated to us unquestioned. Let's get curious. Let's ask the questions. Let's allow ourselves to sit with the answers, even if it's uncomfortable. We don't need judgment. We don't need shame. Neither of those are helpful. Neither of those are necessary. Let's just start with getting aware and getting awake. That is my invitation to all of you beautiful people today. That is the invitation I'm living out as well. And I believe when we do it together, we'll be stronger for it.